Hello, I'm Natasha and this is Noir Histoire.
In this episode of the Career Interview Series, we'll be hearing from Cheick Dukuly, a physical education teacher from Brooklyn, New York. Cheick was a strong academic performer who was equally passionate about sports in junior high and high school, but he lost focus in college and had a difficult time finding a school that fit his needs and satisfied his interests. Eventually, finding his footing, he graduated and went on to work for several years in media sales as an entrepreneur. Cheick now combines his past work experiences and passion for media, sports, and education as a physical education teacher at a charter school.
All right, so we are here with Cheick Dukuly, speaking about your career experience. To start off, can you give me a little brief overview of your background? Where are you from?
My background, I'm from Brooklyn, New York, but my parents are that of immigrants. My father is from Liberia, West Africa, and my mother is from Aruba. At the time, I didn't know of many Arubians, so they met in college and fell in love, got married, and I'm the result.
What were you like as a kid? What were you interested in?
As a kid, interestingly, I'm the only child with my parents, but I was around a lot of cousins. I was the youngest cousin, but I was probably the largest of the five of us. So I was always around older kids, and they kind of, how you harass the young one, so to speak. So I was dealing with that a lot. But as a kid, I was just very inquisitive into everything. I just wanted to know why things were the way they were all the time, no matter what it was.
So you said you were curious as a kid. How did that play out in school? Were you also like equally curious in class, willing to learn and things like that?
I was always a very willing learner in school. I was in a class of, allegedly very smart kids, and we were put on a special track to graduate a little earlier. So we were always very competitive, but always about learning and helping the next person actually do better, because we just wanted to all grow together. It was a big program. We're actually still to this day, a lot of us are very much connected.
What was the name of the school you attended or the program that you attended?
I attended public school 181 in Brooklyn, New York Avenue between Tilden and Snyder. I believe it's called the Steptoe School nowadays. It's because all the schools have names besides numbers. The program we were in was called the SP program, Special Progress, for kids who had certain reading levels, certain math levels, and just overall good grades. And it's about maybe 30 of us, and we all kind of traveled this path together. It really started in seventh grade, but the whole process began looking at us from fifth.
Beyond like the special program that you ran, did you have like any favorite subjects in school or particular things that interested you as a kid?
I really didn't have a favorite subject, though I've always been interested in social studies because social studies is based on history. I really like to see how things played, and I really like to understand why they went the way they were. It always baffled me how certain things happened when they should probably have not happened at all, or we should have seen them coming ahead of time, like world wars, things of that nature.
When you got to high school, were you still in the program or were you like in a more traditional high school type program?
Well, by the time I got to high school, I was entering as a 10th grader. So I was
Okay.
officially out of the program. The program took you from seventh to ninth, and then you
Mhm.
enter high school as a 10th grader. So I was in a traditional high school, but I was a little younger than everyone else who were in those grades. Kids were sometimes a year or almost 2 years older than me at that particular time. But because I was kind of a larger kid, it didn't seem to register with anyone else that I might have been younger. I might have been a little sillier. That's pretty much it. As far as the schoolwork, actually, I felt like it was easier than the work I had been doing for the past 2 years.
How was your high school experience? And with that, preparing for post high school?
My high school experience it was very good. I found the schoolwork to be not as challenging, but it wasn't easy. I still had to make efforts to do it. But I'd say the worst thing about high school for me was the fact that I know I had gone through a very challenging period, knew that I was in a less challenging period, and probably didn't max my efforts because I knew already that I was at a certain level. I wish in retrospect that I had pushed as hard as I did earlier so that my grades would have been at a level where I could have gone anywhere in the country as opposed to maybe the schools that I wound up going to. Socially, it was very good because I was pretty popular. I played sports. I really had no real issues in high school.
I guess those additional expectations that were placed on you in junior high school served you better, like made you push yourself more versus when you got to high
Absolutely.
school and
Absolutely.
the expectations weren't at the same level where you were, kind of able to not so much get by, but able to move through high school without having to push yourself as hard.
Correct. That's exactly what it was. I wish I still had that push when I got to high school.
You mentioned that you went on to school after high school. Well, actually, before we move on to that, did you work during high school? Did you have like your, that typical first job during high school, or did that come later?
No, I did have a couple of summer jobs over my high school experience. As a youngster, most of my friends were getting the summer youth jobs that most New Yorkers have had, depending where you live. I never was able to get one of those summer youth jobs. I was just like very annoyed. Like, I don't understand how everybody in my circle has this job and I can't get it. So, I took it as a little affront. So I just moved on from that. Then there was, back then it was okay to work at fast food, and especially at our age, we love the food. We wanted that stuff, be near it. They wouldn't hire me at fast food places. Again, I just did not understand why. But again, I dealt with it. But my very first job, I worked as a busboy. And basically, I would just clean tables at a restaurant in Midtown Manhattan. And it was fun. The atmosphere was very lively. And everyone thought because I was a tall person that I was the waiter. So they would always ask me to take their orders, and I would just let them know that that's not my position. But then I would just do it anyway and then just pass it to the waiters and stuff. So I kind of learned that team thing, and it's not about who you are; it's about getting the job done. So I learned from that experience also.
Following high school, you then went on to college. What inspired you to, or I guess what went into you choosing the school that you did and your major as well?
My college experience was very different from junior high and high school, mainly because as a high school senior, I was 16 years old, and everyone had been going through these programs where you select college early. A lot of kids knew in October where they were going in the fall to come. I had no idea because I didn't have anyone around me who had any of these experiences. So I kind of was in a bit of a mental funk, meaning I did not know where I was going next. I did not know what was going to happen. I just knew I was going to wind up in college someplace, but I had no idea how it was going to go. So I was actually pretty shook up, like not knowing what was going to happen. What actually happened was there was a program for the University of Miami was having a program where they were bringing basketball players from New York City down to Miami for to try out or to work out for their team. They had a national program that had been shut down because of NCAA college violations from years past. So they got rid of their basketball program. But at the time I was graduating, the program was just opening up. So they were opening it up to New York players, maybe another city, and I was going to be sent down there to join that circle to try to be part of that whole situation. So that
Okay.
was my first stop. But as I went down there as a 16-year-old, it was way too overwhelming for me. I could not drive. Being in the South, never really having spent time in the South, it wasn't really for me. I'm a New Yorker. I'm used to trains. I'm used to stores at the corner. I'm used to being able to move freely in a certain way. And in the South, it just was not that way. I wasn't happy, and my mother just shipped me right back to New York. Within like a 2 month span, I might have left in June. I was back in August. So that really wasn't a pleasant situation, but I did learn from it because you learn from every situation. So then after that, she said, well, you're not going to just be hanging around the house. She enrolled me in the closest community college she could get me to, which at the time was Kingsborough Community College. And I knew nothing of these schools. I just did what my mother told me because I had just turned 17 at this point. I enrolled at Kingsborough. I again find Kingsborough is a beautiful school, but didn't have a really good reputation at the time. I did not think that this was again the place for me, but I said, you know what? I'm not going to make another stop at this point. I said, I'm going to just take a couple of classes, do very well, like I know I can, and then transfer to a school that I'm more interested. My problem there is that I made a lot of friends, again, got very popular, and then got very comfortable in my school situation. In doing that, I wound up staying there. I played ball there, did very well there. The whole situation was actually more positive than I thought it would be. But again, it took me off my focus. And I think the key is that I lost focus. I felt more comfortable than goal oriented because I knew I could graduate from a place like Kingsborough or whatever school at the time. So I stayed there, I made friends, got comfortable. But again, it really wasn't the best situation. So the next year, I transferred to Long Island University, downtown Brooklyn, so I could focus more on my athletics, again, knowing that I would do well with my academics because I have a history of that. I did well there in my academics, but the athletics was a little more corrupt than I may have would ever want to admit. So after dealing with that situation, again, they promised me a scholarship for the following fall semester. I was very much into that. Had a summer job working at the World Trade Center. And while at World Trade Center, got comfortable, met people, got popular, and got very good at the job. And at the time, when I never got my official letter of intent from Long Island University of my scholarship, it put me on the fence. Do I go there without knowing officially that I have it, or do I stay here where I'm making money and actually building a career? I teetered, went both ways, asked both teams questions until I wound up staying at World Trade Center, where I stayed for about 5 years. And then I finally went back to school at New Jersey City University, where I for the reality is that I really wanted to just play sports at the time because I knew I could do anything academically. I met up with a few very good professors. I changed my academic focus from computer science at the time to political science, which was more history and things that I was really into. I changed my major to that, got my degree in that, played sports, and that's where I actually wound up finishing at New Jersey City University.
Let's take a step back. You mentioned that between the time at LIU and then New Jersey City State, that stopped off at World Trade. What were you doing there? Like, was it like one position that you were in during that time, or did you kind of move through a few different positions there?
Well, at the time, the trading floor, it was the Commodities Exchange Commission. The trading floor there, we worked in the coffee, sugar, cocoa division. There was every division of trading commodities was on this floor. It was like Trading Places, if you ever saw that movie before, the exact same place.
Okay.
So at the time, while you have the brokers, there were several different positions. At the time, you have the brokers who do the trading, you have floor clerks who actually run the orders to the brokers. You have phone clerks who take the orders, give them to the floor clerks to pass. And in the background, you have what we call clearing clerks who make sure once orders are filled, that the orders are double checked and made sure that everything's going in the right place before we actually log it into the system. At the time, the trading was so high, that position was in high demand. So as a person with no experience, they could hire you to learn how to do that. So I was hired for one summer as a clearing clerk at one of the firms there. I did the job pretty well, learned it pretty well. That at the end of the summer, they were they offered me a position to stay, which I did, and I wound up staying with them for about maybe till Christmas, till right after Christmas, because right after Christmas I got a new development on the trading floor that really kicked me up.
Let's bring it forward now to your experience at New Jersey City State. It sounds like you were able to get back into your academics and get back on track. Compared to some of the other schools that you'd been to, what do you think really struck with you that allowed you to sort of get back on track there versus at the other places where you felt, it wasn't exactly the right fit or, they were just stopping places?
The best part about NJCU is the fact that it was not New York. I was not a few blocks from home or a bus ride from my neighborhood or my friend's house. I actually felt like I was away from school. That's why I recommend a lot of kids, once they go to college, leave home, see something else, be part of something else. So just going from New York to New Jersey made a whole world of difference in my focus. My focus became way more back to the junior high school style. I'm around a lot of people that I'm not familiar with. And this time I was able to observe them and I saw things that I saw in myself years before there were easy potholes to avoid. And I actually did exceptionally well when I got to that school.
Once you graduated from college, what was your first job out of school?
Well, interestingly, while I was in school, I was part of the Gothic Times newspaper. They had no sports section, so I decided to develop a sports section where I was a one-man sports section. And after graduating with my degree, I really wanted to stay in media, stay in the news, so to speak. So my very first job was writing high school news for one of these free local papers here in New York, figuring let me do this for a little while, gain some writing experience while I applied to these networks, NBC, CBS, Fox. Everybody in every call letter in the nation was getting a resume from me, trying to get in at any position.
Thinking back through your college experiences and then like your early, post-college career experiences, how was your transition from school into like the working world beyond just, positions that you had in college, but now into your career? Did you feel well prepared for those early positions or even for your job hunt?
I did and I didn't.
Okay.
Mainly, what I had to learn was college is a totally different experience than anything you're going to ever have as once you get into the working world. Meaning, the classes I took wouldn't exactly prepare me for my next job. But what the classes I took did prepare my brain for how to handle situations. So I really loved college because of the way it made my brain rewire itself for the real world, not necessarily the specific classes. So in that way, I was ready. Class wise, I wasn't, but it took me a minute to actually figure that out.
When you first graduated or looking back on it now, is there anything that you know now or that you learned, I guess, following graduation that you wish you'd known when you first graduated that you think might have better prepared you or allowed you to achieve earlier success?
Yes. It might have had to do with the times and when I was graduating, but one of the things that I wish I had told myself, and I still tell myself at times, was once you have that school momentum going, as I graduated, I had wished that I had stayed one more year or whatever the year and a half it would have took to complete my master's while I was on a roll, because I was really on a serious roll in school. And I just wish I had gotten that additional degree because that would have made the doors open up that much quicker for me, which I didn't know at the time. At the time, a bachelor's was had some weight. I mean, a master's has more weight, but a bachelor's had good weight. But now for especially not thinking far ahead, a master's would have been great, and even further than that would have been even greater.
But let's speak a bit more about how you transitioned to the more recent present. Can you speak a little bit about what inspired your career track? And then if you choose, you can go into particular positions, but just generally what inspired you to move along in your career?
Well, interestingly, again, it goes back to how my brain was working after college. I wound up going to a party at one point where I was in a room with a lot of people who worked in the media industry. And it was just a regular party, a hangout. Everyone's just kind of doing their thing. And in one of the conversations, I heard someone talking about clients. There's always funny things at people's jobs, so to speak. And I remember the person mentioning about how this client was trying to get on a particular network with his goods. He was a musician. So at the time he was making CDs of his music that I guess he made from home or wherever. So he's basically a guy that would sell CDs out of his car, but he wants to be put on top network shows during what we call prime time when everyone could see his music and maybe he could sell his music, which for him makes a lot of sense. But from the network standpoint, that's very expensive time. So after he does his whole explanation of what he does, it's that person's job to still handle that client like he's a multi-million-dollar client. And them, while they're doing this, because they've done it so many times, they knew this client probably could not afford what he's asking for, but they have to do it anyway. So basically, he said he had about $1,000 for his for advertising. And what he was looking for was probably in the range of 75 to $100,000. So the joke in this sense was the fact that he doesn't have any idea what he's asking for, and he doesn't know what it really costs, but you still got to go through this whole process. So yeah, I get the joke, whatever. So then my brain is telling me, so I just asked the question. I said, okay, I get it, but so what if that client had $20,000? He's trying to say that he still could not get anything that he's trying to get on your particular network. And it was explained to me that no, he could not. He needed the 75 to 100 for what he was asking for. So I again questioned, like, okay, so that $20,000 is really worthless in this case. So they said, well, yes, but no, because there is something you could do with that $20,000, but you can't go through a major national network the same way you would, let's say, maybe a local network or a local carrier or a cable carrier at the time. So there is something for that person to do, but it's just more work. From their standpoint, they just basically take calls, get the orders, and process them, which I guess is what everyone would really want because it makes the job a lot better and simpler. So I was just intrigued by the fact that there is something for a $20,000 budget to handle, and I started doing my research as to what that is. Once I figured that out, these same people who were making these jokes were very quick to say, let me have your number, because when those people call them, rather than going through the whole spiel, they could forward that call to somebody who actually wants to do that business. So that's what happened. I opened up shop with a partner, and then next thing you know, we had some business. And I wound up staying in that business for about 13 years. And it was very lucrative. It was very good. It was very educational because I do like to teach. So what I wound up doing in a lot of cases was teaching clients about the business so that they wouldn't be so that they would just have more information going into it. Unlike that first client, we had the joke.
previously you spoke about positions where, you were an employee. In this case, an opportunity presented itself, or you saw an opportunity, and from that you built this business, right? So you're now an entrepreneur in that role.
Mhm.
Um, was this something that you'd thought about in the past, maybe kept in the back of your mind, possibly being an entrepreneur, or was it that you took advantage of the opportunity just because it seemed too good to pass up?
It's kind of, yes, it's actually that. I mean, as a young man, I've always envisioned having my own business and running my own industry, but I truly didn't know in what capacity because in my little work experience, I've tried many things. I've worked in sales, I've worked in schools, I've worked in a hospital. I've just worked in different places, not knowing what the true niche was. And once I heard that opportunity, it made it very clear to me that this was something that I could sink my teeth into and turn into a business.
Okay. And you mentioned that you did that for a number of years. I think you said 13, was it?
13 years here.
Okay. And so, what did a typical day look like for you running your own company versus, back when you were an employee at someone else's company?
It was very smooth. I would make cold calls to the night before, I may be investigating certain companies who I think could use a person with my expertise. Let's say you own a shoe company and you're just starting and you make a very nice product, or you think you do, and but you just don't know how to get the word out on your particular company. If, let's say, you made that call to me, the first thing I would like to know is what kind of budget you're working with and what your product is. Once I know that, I could basically put together a whole marketing plan via radio, television, cable, magazine, depending on what we're really trying to accomplish. And then we go from there. Now that's what I would do for someone that I've already made a contact with. Now with someone on a typical day, I might be making cold calls to people who are interested, who would be good candidates for what I do. A lot of people don't understand, might not be interested. But as soon as I make that one contact with who will go to the next step of just answering my questionnaire, then it's a process of just finding out what they need, how they're going to use it, and basically putting it together for them and waiting for that signature. Once I do that, I go on the other side. I will just figure out prices. I'll try to get them the best price, negotiate the best price for the client, go back to the client, basically put everything together, and there we have a marketing plan.
Part of running that business required educating like potential customers about what their options might be and things like that. Sort of educating them so that they'd be, I guess, would have more realistic understanding of what's possible compared to that first guy, right?
Yes,
And so you mentioned as well that you had some roles related to teaching as well as sales. Do you believe that the skills that you might have gained from those positions helped you in this role where you owned your own company and were like, essentially
absolutely.
selling and educating people?
Absolutely. I needed every experience I've had from my working experiences in the past to do this because I needed to know how to talk to certain people. I needed to know how to understand certain people. I needed to have learned patience. I needed to know how to reach people also, not just throwing big words at them or just telling them they can do this or they can't do that, but really getting them to understand and trust that what I'm saying is facts that they can look up at some point if they want to. And to really, once you gain that trust, you can gain that business and we can get that repeat business over and over. Yeah, it was a lot because one of the other things that I guess I'm not mentioning is to gain business is great, but to keep business is even greater. And another thing is the fact that not every customer that would come to me was even airable, so to speak. I've had some clients who I had to just gently tell them with their huge budgets that we cannot air what you want me to air because it just would not pass protocol, which took a different kind of experience also.
Just out of curiosity, was it that whatever they were trying to promote, was it like not up to standard? Was it controversial? Or I guess what would usually be the reason for you essentially, rejecting a client or a potential client?
Standards, basic
Okay.
standards. I had one particular client who, I mean, they were selling like smut,
Oh,
borderline. I mean, it's stuff that, yes, we may have seen it on TV before or just, to that edge, but just things that I just could not push. I couldn't get the network to accept it. I couldn't get the locals to accept it. I couldn't get anybody to accept it. And these were huge budgets. Now, I could be a lot richer if I'd found somebody to accept it, but no, it wouldn't work. Then there's just other things that are just absolutely off the wall that, again, unacceptable for screening standards.
okay. And so in saying that, like, you also hear a little bit about, I guess, principles, right? And conscience there. Uh, Not so much the specifics of, I guess, what are your principles or standards, but how do you feel operating with, some kind of code, I guess, or, your own personal principles? How has that served you in your career? Like you said, accepting these people's money when, the stuff that they want to air probably won't be able to get onto the networks or get any kind of screen time. How do you think that's sort of taking that stand or noting that line has served
Right.
you in your career?
I find it very easy because I was raised a certain way, and knowing right from wrong is not as hard as we make it out to be. It was very easy to, I mean, I tried hard to try to even get the client to maybe adjust his product to a point where it's a little more acceptable because I did understand the things that they were doing, but I didn't find it hard at all. I could sleep at night knowing that I did my best for the client, I did my best for the situation, and I did my best for all parties at hand. And if it didn't work, it didn't work. There'll be another one.
Okay. And let's now move a little bit more towards the present.
Okay.
What are you currently working on, or what have you been working on over the last few years?
Well, since I shut the business down maybe a little over a year ago, I decided because my other true passion has always been athletics. I've been coaching, even while I was working, I've been coaching as a volunteer coach on the AAU circuit for a number of years to a point where I made a connection where now I'm actually a high school coach. So now, as a high school coach, I'm really doing what I love, which is coaching basketball, sports of all kinds on the high school level. But what I'm actually doing with my extended media buying experience is because I work at a progressive school, the Uncommon Leadership Charter. I have developed a project where all of my work experiences are now being taught to a small group of students who have interest in these areas, basically given something that I didn't particularly have when I was in high school, but I know for a fact these kids are just reaping the rewards of my experience. And we've basically created a small media network, and I'm giving them all the tools and all the rigors that are needed so that once they leave school or graduate college or whatever, they can go to a network and speak the language and be able to get in, unlike myself at my time. It's a great thing. It's a great thing.
You closed down the company that you had that you were running, and you're now working on this. Um, what, I mean, you mentioned your passion for teaching, but I guess what was the deciding factor, or was there one deciding factor, or was it just that you wanted to pursue your passions that led you to, going into coaching and helping these kids better prepare for their future careers and things like that, rather than starting another business? or, moving into some other
Right.
career?
Well, there were a couple of factors at the time. One of the key factors, which I never, even to this day, I could never understand, was I could never find that second person that I could still do the business with, that could bring other things to it that, let's say, where I may have gaps. I could never have that second person. I mean, I've tried. I've gone through a series of employees, partners, different, members that I think could be good. But I could never find that second star, so to speak, to basically go to the championship with. What I wound up doing, and especially, well, what I wound up doing was basically doing everything myself. And I basically beat myself up to the point where I started to not even like the business anymore, which, you know, maybe I burned myself out. So I said, I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm going to move on into something else. And then, even when I started to get the fire back, the whole business changed. We started getting more internet ads. The whole opening up of the World Wide Web changed the business. Whereas now I would have to direct more of my expertise towards the web ads, et cetera, et cetera. And at the time, like Instagram, Twitter, they were newbies. So it was really hard to make money that way. So I just felt the whole business shifting that way. So I lost interest and started to go more towards things that I wanted to do.
So let's talk a little bit about your philosophies about career and work in general. How would you personally define success?
That's a good one. Success has several facets to it. One, of course, financial success, everyone understands, and everyone can put a number as to what they define as success. What might be success to me may not be success to another person, which else might think is absolute success. To me, key success is one, something you can put away financially and be able to do anything you're really trying to do at the time. So if just eating every day is your thing and you can eat well every day, that's a definition of success. If buying huge properties every month or year is your definition of success, then yeah, that's what it is. So I really find it personal as to what a definition of success is financially. Now, from another standpoint, it's about you, meaning how you feel. I find leaving my business, though I was successful at it, was still fine. And what I'm doing now is still a measure of success for me because I have way less stress and I'm still very happy doing exactly what I'm doing. So again, happiness in what you're doing. If you can sleep at night comfortably, knowing what you do on a daily, then you have made a nice measure of success in that capacity. And then on another standard, you can also realize what you're doing for your community per se. So maybe taking out, maybe being a garbage collector, someone else may look at that as something not great, but you know what? If your community is up to par, if you're happy with what you do and everything is working out for you, then again, that is a measure of success. Teaching is the way I give back. And I know that I've left a mark with my group, whether it's coaching, whether it's teaching about media, whether it's just teaching kids how to behave on a regular basis, is all another measure of success that I all use as part of the standard of success.
You mentioned the positive feeling, I would say, that you feel from teaching and giving back and being an inspiration to these kids that you're now working with. Looking back over your career, would you say that the current reality, or I guess in totality, the career that you've had, the work experiences that you've had, do you feel that they've surpassed, matched, or fallen short of the aspirations and expectations you had for yourself? Let's say when you first graduated from college or while you were a college student.
I'll say that they definitely matched at certain points and then surpassed at other points, meaning I never would let my whatever I'm doing work-wise ever fall to a certain level where I'm not giving back. So if I'm working at a job, per se, in a hospital, which I have done in the past, where I'm not having that community outreach where I'm been able to teach people, I'm still doing enough volunteer work where I know that I'm reaching my community at every standpoint. To the point where in other jobs where I'm like at the one I'm at now, where I'm definitely with the community on a daily basis, where I'm definitely surpassing that number, that yeah, I definitely have matched and continue to surpass and plan to surpass even further.
Okay. And so earlier on, we were speaking about your college experiences. You mentioned, that you think it's a good idea for kids to sort of leave their environments that they grew up in, and try to experience something new and different. Um, what other advice would you offer either to kids that are currently in school or even to your younger self about just life or careers in general,
Well,
knowing what you know now?
right. Well, especially what I know now, one of the key lessons that I learned is that love your friends. Your friends are important to you, but your life should be more important and your future should be more important. Don't make your decisions based on your friends. Make your decisions, and if your friends can be part of it, then yes. But if not, you need to be able to stand alone and live with every decision you make. If your friends decide to go someplace and you need to go somewhere else, that's not a decision. You just go where you need to go. You do what you got to do. Kids today, and in general, follow. And if you're following the right person, that'd be great. But in a lot of cases, they're not. They're following someone who's going to lead them to a path that it may not be a path of destruction, but it will definitely be a path that could keep them off the straight and narrow that'll get them to where they're going. Basically, they're being slowed down by their friends and by poor decision making. So it's about making the right decision. If you really don't know, ask. Don't ask a person who's right next to you who has no experience. Ask someone who's more of a mentor. Find a mentor, a teacher, a parent. It could be someone else's parent because if well, your parent would be nice or a family member. But sometimes you may want a opinion from someone just outside of the box. Don't go to another kid. Go to someone above your current level for just general advice and seek it and make decisions based on what's best for you, not to follow your friends.
Okay. And then looking to the future, what goals or plans are you currently pursuing? I know you're working on, the media project with the students, but either that, what plans do you have for that in the future, or any other things that you might be working on?
Well, currently, because of you know, my heart and love for the sports, I plan to keep teaching sports until I can't walk and talk anymore. And other than that is my project, which though I'm doing it in one school currently, I expect this project to grow to the point where I'm going to be in several schools and I can go from school to school and just help manage and make these projects as huge as possible. I'd like to have basically high school networks, so to speak, in every school that I'm a part of, because it actually teaches these kids how to do things in an adult fashion, because that's where they're going. They're not your lunchroom is not the life. There is a lot more that you need to be prepared for. At least if you touch it, once you see it, it's not a shock.
And then for our last regular question, imagine it's years from now and you're nearing or already retired. When you look back over your career, what accomplishments or achievements would make you proudest? What would make you consider your career a roaring success versus, just mediocre or disappointing?
I would like to just look back at my roster of students, which whether they be athletes or they're media kids or they're just in other aspects of life that I touch. And I just need to see what I call measured success. Whether, I mean, not every kid is going to the NBA, but I would like to say that, okay, this kid here, let's call him John. This kid here walked in not knowing how to play at all. Now he's playing college basketball someplace. This kid here who had great talent as an athlete, maybe very tall, he actually went to the highest level. That's what I call success. Even with my media kids, this girl was very shy. Now she's writing for CBS News or she works at a radio station. My key is to have every kid have a sustained measure of success in whatever area it is.
Okay.
That would make me almost like a proud parent, so to speak.
And for our bonus round, have there been any books, people, or events that have motivated or inspired, otherwise shaped your career or your career? And for the people, it can be, either some famous figure or, a family member or something like that, someone that's just known to you in your circle.
Right. There haven't been many like in my circle that I would want to use in this particular instance, but there have been some books like the book Relentless. Of course, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, things to that nature. Motivational books have always been my thing, and it's about motivation and inspiration. So, yeah, I'll just go with that. Relentless is
What
you'll read Relentless and you'll just want to go to the gym.
what exactly is it about that particular book that really spoke to you?
Well, in Relentless, and I think Tim Grover I believe he is the author. Um, he basically talks about his experiences with Kobe Bryant, whereas Kobe was this guy who he had this unbelievable drive, even from a youngster. I mean, it went through the roof later in life, but an unbelievable drive to be successful, to be the absolute very best. He wanted to be Michael Jordan times 10. And if you actually saw him play, if you put them side by side on video, his movements are exactly, because he studied them so well, they move exactly the same way. Now, I don't expect my media kids, or even basketball kids to read Relentless and want to be Kobe Bryant. But it does teach them what drive can do for you and where it can take you. And that's what it's about. Because we can't all be Kobe Bryant. We can't all be the same thing, but we can all have that drive to get to whatever landing place in success that we're going to be.
So thank you, Cheick, for participating in the interview. I greatly appreciate you being a part of the project.
Key takeaways. Set high expectations for yourself. It's important to challenge yourself to do your best and try to reach your full potential. Settling for the bare minimum or accepting mediocrity increases the likelihood that you lose focus and underperform. Every experience is a learning opportunity. The cumulative knowledge you gain from putting together those educational moments can be incredibly powerful and beneficial. Try not to view these experiences as isolated or unrelated entities, but rather identify how they can be combined and build on each other. Having friends and a social life is great and important, but your individual life and future should be a greater priority. It's great if your life decisions can include your friends, but their approval or inclusion shouldn't be the determining factor. If need be, you should be able to stand alone and do what needs to be done. Don't allow yourself to be slowed down or taken off your path. Seek advice and guidance from responsible mentors and other people with more life experience. Connect with Cheick on LinkedIn. Thanks for listening and watching. I hope you'll join me again next week to get motivated, get inspired, and get stories of Black history made and in the making. Until then, take care. Thanks again for tuning in, and I hope you return to watch future episodes. For more information about Noir Histoire, visit the Noir Histoire website. There you'll find text, video, and audio for each episode all in one place. Subscribe to the Noir Histoire newsletter to get fresh content delivered straight to your email inbox. You can also subscribe to the Noir Histoire YouTube channel for videos. If you're enjoying the content but would prefer to listen to audio, you can subscribe to the Noir Histoire podcast. Follow Noir Histoire on Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest. Enjoy the rest of your day.